You're listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. This is the show that talks about identity and access management and making sure you know who has access to what. Let's get started. Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and there is no Jim this week. He and I were supposed to co-present at the FIDO Alliance Authenticate 2021 conference this week in Seattle. Unfortunately, he was unable to make the trip due to a last-minute illness. So, I am flying solo this week, and I had several conversations with fellow identity professionals around a number of topics. This is the second of 5 conversations this week. I spoke with Andrew Shikiar and Joon Hyuk Lee of the FIDO Alliance, Bhaskar Deo of Trillbit, and Aaron Brighton of Lockdrop about the FIDO Developer Challenge. Thanks in advance for listening, and here is that conversation. Okay, we're here with another episode of the Identity at the Center podcast, and I'm here with a few different people. We're going to talk about the FIDO Developer Challenge. We've got Andrew Shikiar, who is no stranger to this show. I think this is this the third or the
This is my third, indeed.
Third time on the show, so that's good. We're going to talk with him. We're going to talk with Joon Hyuk Lee as well, who is patiently waiting in the wings here. We'll get to him in a minute. And then we're also going to talk with Bhaskar Deo and Aaron Brighton, who are some of the developers that took part as part of this developer challenge. So before we get to that, Andrew, if you don't mind, can you kind of explain, what was, or I guess what is the FIDO Developer Challenge? What was the purpose of it?
Yeah, thanks. So, as you look at what FIDO's objectives are overall, globally, our goal is to drive adoption of modern FIDO authentication. And we've made really good progress over the past couple of years in getting the endpoints addressed, meaning that just about every device on market today can support FIDO authentication. Now, and that's a really important part of the equation. Now, the other part of the equation, of course, is actually empowering and engaging with developers to get people to leverage, say, the WebAuthn API to, build FIDO authentication into services and apps and such. So we launched a couple of years ago. We actually started catalyzing different developer communities, and we launched a hackathon in Korea. We've had it for 2 straight years, where we worked with the local development community in Korea. We paired them with mentors from different FIDO members who had SDKs and could kind of help them along the way with some really cool implementations of novel technology concepts. Now that, like I said before, the distributions out there and WebAuthn APIs is publicly available, as are some related toolkits, we decided to broaden the scope of our challenge and make it truly global and have it be a prolonged challenge, hence the FIDO Developer Challenge. So our goal was to put it out there and see who could bring interesting ideas on how to leverage this technology to come up with a better login experience than currently exists.
That seems pretty cool. It seems like a good way to kind of get the developer community involved, but also really source some of those innovative ideas as far as, you build the tools, right? And then how does someone take advantage of it? Or you build a framework, whatever it may be. So let's start with Bhaskar. He's the CEO and co-founder of Trillbit. I guess, one of the traditions that we have whenever you come on our show is to really just kind of understand the identity origin story for folks. So maybe just real quickly, if you can tell us, how did you get into identity? I'm assuming you weren't just born and then went into identity, but how did you end up here?
Well, believe it or not, I was doing oil exploration using sound waves. So, just like you use ultrasonic waves for doing an ultrasound of your organs, you can do the same thing, just at a much larger level for oil and gas, for Earth. But then I decided, the interesting idea came that, there are more speakers and microphones in the world than there are people, right? And why not use sound as a medium for communication rather than the electromagnetic waves, which we already use in 4G and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and so on. And since this hardware that we need is already there, which is your speakers and microphones in all the devices, we decided to leverage that and use sound for authentication. But this sound is not audible to human ears. So it's in near ultrasonic range, but still supported by everyday devices. And that's how we came into, we decided to build Trillbit, which is trill is a sharp sound and bit is data, so data over sound.
Interesting. So the sound is the authentication platform, or the method, I guess I should say?
So sound is basically the carrier. So it's a medium for sending authentication data between any two devices.
Okay. And then what is it that's communicating? Is it, I guess, the tone? Is it the frequency? Both?
So it's actually real data. Just like you do any kind of authentication, you would send your identity information. So for example, a challenge and a response. So this challenge and a response or public key or even your OTPs can be sent over sound, just like you would send any data over, say, a Bluetooth connection or over a Wi-Fi connection. So instead of like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, now you are using sound, which has like certain advantages over Bluetooth or over RF waves in certain conditions. So it's not to be used everywhere, but it has its own advantages, especially when used in terms for security and authentication.
Interesting. So I guess how does this work in the real world? What would be like the practical application of using something like this?
Well, I can give you a lot of examples, but I can go directly into the sound auth product we built for this developer challenge. So in that, the product that we built for FIDO Developer Challenge, which is sound auth, basically how it works, like, there are a lot of devices now which have like biometrics built in, like fingerprints. But there are also a lot of devices already there in the world which do not have biometrics built in, like fingerprint, or people don't use hardware keys. So, but everyone has a phone which has a fingerprint or a facial recognition. So essentially the idea is that we built in, whenever you walk into a room and your device is there, you log into it just by having your phone next to it. So if you are in the room and your phone is unlocked, the phone transmits the authentication code directly to your application and it's unlocked. The moment you walk off the room or out of range, the device will automatically unlock. So the authentication happens over sound. And one of the big advantages of sound is like sound does not travel outside the confines of a physical space. Like you do not hear something that's going on in your next room, hopefully. So that means that whatever authentication or communication is happening is bound by this physical space. So the idea is when somebody walks into a room, his applications automatically unlock, he walks off, they are locked. And you do not need any additional hardware. It will work with all the existing things. All you need is a phone. It could be Android, iOS, Windows. And similarly, any desktop or laptop that you have would work with this.
So your device it's when it's unlocked, it's basically acting as a beacon and just pulsing out whatever this ultrasonic sound is.
Yeah.
And something somewhere is receiving that.
Yeah, your laptop or your desktop is receiving that through its microphone.
Gotcha. Very interesting. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what is this is the background in the oil and gas and how that would work? Is that what kind of drove this, or what was the idea that got you to this?
Right. So basically it's like doing this is not like trivial in terms of like signal processing and so on. So what we are doing in oil and gas is a lot of really advanced signal processing, and that helped us build a platform that would become basically the backbone for this technology. So relatively doing it, a rudimentary concept of this project would be easy, but doing it at a scale that would work for different kinds of devices in different environment requires a lot of really advanced signal processing, and then condensing it down to an algorithm that could be basically run on like everyday devices, like basic phones, basic microprocessors. So that was the basic background. And taking it like the signal processing, like acoustic or audio signal processing from there into data transmission and essentially authentication was basically the signal processing that we did there was the inspiration to bring it on to the not just in a particular industry, but where everyone can use it and everyone could benefit from it.
So and the name of this is Shacksware? Is that right? Or Shocksware?
No. So the name of my startup is Trillbit. As
Trillbit,
I said.
okay.
Yes. But the name of the product is Sound Auth.
Sound
and auth as in authentication.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I was getting confused because we were talking about different products before we started.
Yeah, that's
I think that was
other
the team in Japan. So I just spoiled it for that, but we'll get to that in a second. So that is sound auth. So let's talk about Lockdrop. Let's talk with Aaron Brighton. He's the founder of Lockdrop. Aaron, what's your identity origin story? And then let's hear more about Lockdrop.
Sure. So the identity industry is kind of new to me. I've been following like the identity industry from the sidelines for a number of years, and this goes back to my initial interest was, I remember years ago there was an article, I think it was Google, that had put out, and they had said that they had essentially eliminated phishing from their organization by adopting security keys. And over the past few years, Ubico, I think it was back in 2019, announced the Ubico Bio. And so I've been following along as we've started to see the adoption of biometric authentication becoming more mainstream. And in the past couple years especially, we've seen web browsers and platform devices like cell phones really start to integrate the essential pieces to be able to do multi-factor authentication in a passwordless way. And so this has been really exciting for me to watch from the sidelines. And then this year I saw some post on LinkedIn about the FIDO Developer competition, and thought, this is a great opportunity to try to integrate some of these technologies into my own company's product, Lockdrop, and modernize our authentication system.
So Lockdrop was an existing product today.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do?
Sure. So Lockdrop is a document sharing platform. So we're essentially focused on trying to secure the exchange of sensitive documents and data. So this is a common problem across many different industries. We're focused on the financial and legal industries specifically, and a certain size of business in those industries who are dealing with document exchange on a day-to-day basis. What we're trying to do differently than some of the existing solutions out there is focus on making things ridiculously easy, but also doing the actual document exchange process in a meaningfully secure way. I've been in the security industry for quite a while, InfoSec, and what I've observed is that if you want users to adopt a technology, you have to make it You have to make it essentially as easy as what they're currently doing, or easier than what they're currently doing, especially with security technologies. So this is kind of the primary focus with Lockdrop, but on the other side, using end-to-end encryption technology to secure that actual document exchange process, so that you can eliminate as much of the risk to that data from the process as possible, where the majority of existing solutions today have quite a few number of people involved in between that have access to that data. If you're thinking about most platforms today, there's handfuls, if not hundreds, of engineers behind the scenes that have access to that data that's being stored on, say Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive or any number of document storage platforms. So this is our focus, and it's exciting to see end-to-end encryption becoming more pervasive, and these companies also picking up on that.
So what's the hook then for the FIDO side? What was the specific change that was built? And I guess, can you talk a little bit about the detail behind that?
For sure, yeah. So our implementation was focused on our login system, so not part of our actual document sharing process. However, through this competition, there's been a lot of ideas about how we can integrate FIDO2 into that as well. So we were focused on taking our existing passwordless login process, which was using a traditional OTP approach over SMS or over email to authenticate users, and upgrading that, or at least giving users the option to use FIDO2 WebAuthn to be able to enroll their security keys or enroll their platform authenticators, basically mobile devices. Part of the drive for that was to be able to say that you can have MFA while logging into our system. So traditionally, in a passwordless, most passwordless systems today are single factor. So like SMS, OTP, you're verifying the possession of some device, a mobile device. That's a single factor. And if you wanted MFA, typically you'd have to reintroduce, a knowledge factor, a password or something, or a PIN or something like this. And we already know, that passwords are, problematic. Knowledge-based authentication is problematic for the majority of users. It's not to say that certain users that are responsible with with knowledge-based factors can't have a lot of security with them, but the majority of users are going to have problems with knowledge-based factors. So that leaves biometrics, and we're now seeing with biometric security keys and with platform authenticators-based cell phones that have built-in biometrics, and the protocols that FIDO2 and WebAuthn have put together, the standards rather, we're starting to see that become a possibility to leverage.
So are these enhancements now part of the core product? They're in production and live and people are using it?
Yeah, so we actually have this live on our product today. So when you register, you have the option to enroll using a FIDO certified security key or a platform authenticator, like a mobile device, and then you can authenticate with that.
How long has it been in production that people could do that?
Since I guess last month. So it was done as part of this competition. So that was kind of the catalyst for implementing this. And the competition is actually what drove me to look through the standards and look through the libraries and so on that are out there to try to implement this. Very
cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Joon, we're going to go to you next because you're going to represent the team from Japan. And I think that was Shaxware, right? So let's start. I mean, Joon, you're the one that's been leading this FIDO Developer Challenge for the FIDO Alliance. So I guess from your perspective, maybe let's just, before you even get to Shaxware, from your role leading this initiative, I guess what were some of the things that you were looking for to say, hey, that's cool. Like let's bring that to the table, or let's maybe advance that team, maybe for over others.
Sure. Well, I guess there are two pieces on this event. One is education. That's something that we always wanted to do through the webinars and workshops and so on. And then another piece is the challenge itself. Looking for great ideas and great startups and things like that. And over the last 2 years in Korea, when we did the hackathons in the past years, it's mainly focused on education. What the FIDO is about, how we do it, just giving them more information about how they can fully utilize what we have. But from this third year that we switched from hackathon to FIDO Developer Challenge, we found out that it can be another avenue to bring in bright ideas and great concepts that not just our members, but all this entire world can fully benefit from what we have. So some companies like, for example, Lockdrop here, they are fully utilizing FIDO in terms of making the user experience simpler and stronger. But if you look at the Soundhoff, they're kind of going beyond that. And then trying to figure out what if we don't have NFC, or what if we don't have Bluetooth? How are we gonna show the presence of our devices or things like that? So that was actually what we were looking for, and we are so great to have these two teams came up as one of the top 3 teams.
That's pretty cool. I'm thinking about this alternative for NFC and other authentication methods. And one of the ideas that I've been kind of thinking about is, what does multiple MFA look like that doesn't look like a password involved as part of that, right? There's a token somewhere. Is it a push notification plus sound waves? I mean, I'd never even thought about sound waves before, but it makes sense, right? And then how does a company that's already in establishment and has customers like Aaron, right? How do you incorporate some of those technologies and give your customers the choice to be able to say, hey, we're a secure company. We have a bunch of these different methodologies. Pick the one that makes the most sense for you. We support, X, Y, Z, whatever that looks like. Tell us a little bit about Shaxware. What is that?
I'll do my best. So it's unfortunate that we don't have this team from Japan in person joining the Authenticate event. but on behalf of the teams and their members, I will do my best. So their idea was in Japan they have a national ID code called My ID. It's like a driver's license from DMV that we have in the States. But in My ID card, they have smart chips embedded. The one that you see from your credit card. So their idea was, why don't we just use that as a FIDO roaming authenticator, so they can not just show to cops, but also use it for online shopping, and then use it as a entrance card for your company's gate, things like that. So they did a proof of concept, and it was just great.
So the idea then is you have this national ID, and it can act as this roaming authenticator, and essentially replace maybe a cell phone or augment it in some way, where you have now two factors that could be associated with it. With the identity, is that the intention?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Is there anything specific? And maybe we want the team from Japan to maybe answer this one. So feel free to pass if we need to. But is there anything specific from a technology that's needed to enable that kind of scenario? Because mobile driver's license is sort of hitting the U.S. is just kind of starting, but they're looking at it more on mobile devices rather than a smart ID, right? Which I think is the alternative to it. What's the technology, I guess, that's needed? Is it just a simple NFC chip on the device?
So I'm not sure you're going to actually use this for your podcast, but the real answer is that technology is already there. It's more like a policymaker's decision, whether to push it forward or not. So it's basically based on the WebAuthn protocol that we already have. And the truth is, a lot of our members in Japan, they want this to happen. And nobody even actually have done the POCs yet, because they know it's more like a policy-making kind of approaches. So, our members in Japan, when they saw this POC, they were very happy, because, they can show the world that, hey, this can work.
That's an interesting point you bring up around legislation and it not keeping up with technology sometimes. And I think, I'd be curious, from your perspective, we're an international show. We have people all over the world who listen. I can certainly have my thoughts around the U.S. government and being able to pick things up. But it's interesting you mentioned that with the Japanese government. It seems like it's not just the U.S. who's a little bit slow to maybe keep up the technology stuff. And Joon, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Andrew. What do you think is needed to convince governments that this is the future? This is the way. The longer you delay it, the worse it's going to be for everybody. How do we convince governments to move forward with this?
That's $1 million question, right?
Yes, it is.
Once again, I'm not sure whether you're going to actually use it for your podcast, but in Korea, where I come from, I think something really bad has to happen. It's like a change management. It's like you don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to lose my weight, kind of thing. You don't wake up one day and then say, hey, I'm going to do more study and go to MIT or Harvard, By the way, you're familiar with MIT, right? So whether do we want to actually wait for the moment that somebody, bleed and, we just have to make the change, or like a organization like us, FIDO Alliance, we are doing a lot of education to let them know that this is coming and we need to change. So that's, once again, that's $1 million question that I really cannot answer.
Yeah, Andrew, I think from your perspective, I guess, what does it take to get in front of, the policymakers here in the U.S. to say, look, this is a technology that exists. It's here. What we need is just, national buy-in, whatever that looks like, to move forward. Things like, hey, let's get rid of the password.
Yeah, so actually, I think we've made great progress globally with having governments recognize and embrace and point to FIDO authentication, whether that means for implementation for like government or e-citizen services or in regulation. So we actually have different bodies inside of FIDO Alliance that help drive this outreach. So we have a government deployment working group, which is actually comprised of many government members who talk about different kind of services they've deployed to share best practices. We also have a policy, initiative where we engage and educate policymakers. And I think the net result of all of this is, things like here in the U.S., back in May, the Biden administration issued an executive order, mandating that different government agencies move towards unphishable multi-factor authentication. Right, a very deliberate choice of words, basically denigrating like the legacy MFA, OTPs, which they've done already, but also opening up the opportunity for different government agencies to use other forms of FIDO authentication, such as FIDO security keys or platform authenticators, side by side with their traditional means of credentialing government employees with things like PIV and CAC cards, which are very, they also use public key cryptography, but simply don't have the it's a higher barrier to deploy these things. There's a lot of friction involved with getting them out at scale, and there's friction in enrolling users, especially when people are remote. Whereas with the FIDO approach, by and large, the agency employees can either be issued a key quite quickly, or they can leverage what's on their device already. So I think that's one reason why we're seeing stuff like that from, again, the U.S. We now also seen CISA and OMB also really talk about their own zero trust strategies, which came out of this Biden EO. And their zero trust strategies also point to FIDO WebAuthn as a preferred mechanism to protect government workers.
So I think that executive order kind of helps push the government. In the real world, though, how quickly does something like that actually happen? Do you see an uptick? Like, as the executive director of FIDO, do people reach out to you and say, hey, this is great news? Is there something that happens 6 months later, a year later? I guess, what's the...
Yeah, I think we see immediate impact. So these agencies are deploying, right? There's I don't know how many, the bureaucracy here is huge. The U.S. government bureaucracy, like there's no lack of agencies and employees. And I can tell you right now, like our security key vendors are super excited by this. And they're spending a lot of time in Washington, D.C., taking advantage of this opportunity. Because again, the FIDO security key for an enterprise is such a great solution. And the keynote we had here this week was from Bob Lord. Bob's the former chief security officer at the Democratic National Committee. And he had a really, first of all, awesome presentation. But a couple of the key takeaways was like, hey, look, they rolled this out to a highly distributed, non-technical workforce of volunteers and full-time staff across the country. Thousands of people they rolled security keys out to, educated them on how to use them to protect themselves, protect their accounts. And he said it's quite possible to do. He's like, he proved, that was one of his proof points, yes, it is possible to rapidly deploy FIDO security keys to a distributed workforce. And so my point there is that, yes, this can be done, and we're seeing it done through groups like the DNC. And I think these government agencies will certainly follow suit in bringing it out to their employees. And then the next step, of course, is rolling it out to American citizens. And on that last point, since, again, looking from the U.S. perspective, login.gov, which is a site where you can do all sorts of government services, that supports FIDO security keys or platform authenticators. And so they're an active member inside of FIDO Alliance. We talk to them and work with them to help refine that program. They've shared some data. They've had some good progress, but there's a lot of work left to do, and a lot of growth opportunities as far as enrolling more people. So we need to work with them to do some education as collectively more consumers become aware of the fact that there's a difference between authentication, legacy multi-factor authentication, and modern multi-factor authentication, which is truly unphishable.
Right. And when you talk about legacy, authentication or multi-factor authentication, I think we're crapping on the CMS, I think, or SMS. Sorry, the text messaging, which I think any MFA is better than no MFA, but if you're going to make the jump, now's the time to do it. Login.gov is interesting because I know it from doing TSA pre-check and passport, stuff like that. I had to go and enroll a couple years ago, and it's been for a government agency, not a terrible experience. It's getting it set up. So, all right. Well, I think that's a pretty good spot. Maybe we can leave it. I really appreciate you guys' time and setting aside a few minutes here. I'm just got one question for all of you, and we'll just kind of go left to right. Bhaskar's on my left. What has been your favorite thing so far about the Authenticate conference?
I think just the quality of speakers and the challenges that the community as a whole is tackling has been really helpful, and not just in terms of like as a startup and as a member of community, but also learning about just how the whole space is evolving and how fast it's evolving, and basically the future of all of computing is you can see it happening here. So it's really great to be part of that.
Well, as a speaker, I appreciate the quality speaker comment. So, Aaron, how about yourself?
Sure. I really enjoyed the free Ubi key and the swag kit. No, the speakers have been amazing, and one of the really valuable things I've seen out of the presentations is the amount of metrics that these organizations are actually, like, they have their thumb on the pulse of what's happening around identity and authentication, and they're showing that to us through some of these these charts and so on that they put together for these presentations. So that's really great to see that there's progress being made in this industry, and it's happening very quickly. So I think we're kind of on the cusp of a revolution in identity and authentication, and just the opportunity to network with professionals in this industry, an industry that I'm new to. So it's a great opportunity.
Very cool. Joon, how about yourself? What's been your favorite thing so far?
Just to see these guys face, because I've been talking to them online for the last 6 months, and now we see each other face to face. That's fantastic. And Andrew, I haven't seen him for the last 2 years. So what else? That's the most exciting part.
Yeah, I hear you with that for sure. I think this is my first business travel in quotes that nobody can see in the last 18 months or so. Andrew, what's been your favorite thing that, I guess, this is your baby, right? I mean, this is your thing. So what's been the best thing so far? And I know we're on day 2, so I know there's another day, and then there's plenary after that. So
I'm one of the parents of this baby. There's a whole team that's put this on, and I think it's been really great to see the response we've received. And it feels good to know, like, this face-to-face things, is really nice, and I've heard that from a lot of people. And it's nice to know that we were able to bring people together. And people, I think it's human nature to want to meet and to talk to people and have conversations, but the topic needs to be germane for people to actually get travel approval, like you all did, and to come out here and be together. And it's frankly been inspiring to see how much thought there has been put into the presentations, including your own, Jeff. But also to see, like Aaron is talking about, there's really is this kind of missionary feel here, I think. I'm not to overhype it too much, but everyone's really committed to this. And this open sharing of information and best practices, it's really kind of a microcosm of what happens inside of FIDO Alliance, but the next rung out, the broader community. So it's been really great to see people in person, see side conversations happening, but all of it centering around, the shared goal of moving towards better forms of user authentication.
Yeah, it certainly has been very cool. I think this is one of the things that I'm always impressed by the identity industry is just how willing people are to share things about security. Typically this is not secret sauce. Like, everybody has passwords, everybody has MFAs, everybody has different types of authentication or authorizations. And a conference like this has been great to see actual numbers from companies saying, here's what we did, here's the numbers that we saw X percentage growth or decline and whatever it may be. And just the ability to have that, I guess, camaraderie, right, of being part of the crew from an identity perspective and being able to share that information. My favorite thing so far is hands down nowhere near as cool what you guys said, but it's the camera guy on the little
awesome.
It's not a Segway, but it's like the little hoverboard things, right?
Yes,
the little
yes.
2 wheels, and him just going up and down the aisles and taking video. I mean, I'd be all over the place if that happened.
Yeah, we had a full production team here. I mean,
Yeah.
one thing, it's not an easy time to do events, and we're blessed to have a really good production team, and that he's part of that, and looking forward to seeing the footage that he has.
The thing is, when he moves around, people only watch him, not the speakers. So.
Yes, this is true.
It is a little bit distracting, but in a cool way, because it's hard to describe for an audio podcast like this. But picture a guy with basically a gimbal rig with a camera, well, multiple cameras it looks like on it, and then he's got this whole vest on, looks like he's going to battle with something, and then he's standing on top of this hoverboard, which, for lack of is basically a 2-wheel type thing, and the guy is like up and down aisles.
He looks like a mall cop with a bunch of cameras. So yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I tweeted out a picture of him earlier today, calling him a cyborg. So hopefully he doesn't take offense to it. But if people want to see what you're talking about, go look for that photo.
Yeah, there you go. He's so far, no offense to anyone else, but he's been my MVP just looking at it.
No offense taken.
He's been putting the work that he's been putting in. All right, let's go ahead and leave it there. I appreciate you guys' time, and thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you all in the next one.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and visit us on the web at identityatthecenter.com.